welcome to the Property Wealth Podcast. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
So, today we're diving into a topic that can be a bit tricky for landlords, handling late rent payments legally.
Yeah, it's one of those things that can really stress you out, right? But it doesn't have to be.
Exactly. It's all about knowing your rights and responsibilities and how to approach the situation calmly.
We'll talk about some practical steps you can take if you find yourself in this position and how to communicate effectively with your tenants.
And we'll also touch on the legal aspects, what the law actually says about late payments and how to protect yourself while maintaining a good relationship with your tenants.
It's all about balancing your interests with theirs and understanding that sometimes life happens.
Right. So whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, these insights will be really helpful.
For sure. And remember, it's not just about collecting rent. It's about building a long-term, sustainable investment.
So let's jump right in and start exploring those practical strategies for handling late payments.
You know, Sarah, when we talk about late rent payments, it's not just about the money that's owed. It's about security, especially for those of us over 40.
Absolutely, Mike. I think a lot of people in that age group are really starting to think about retirement timelines, right?
Exactly. When you're in your 40s and beyond, you're often looking at your cash flow more critically. Any late payments can really throw a wrench into those plans.
Right. And with inflation being what it is these days, every dollar counts. If you're depending on that rental income to support your lifestyle or savings for retirement, a late payment can feel like a huge setback.
That's a good point. I remember talking to a client, let's call him Tom. He had a few properties and relied heavily on the rent for his monthly expenses. One month, one of his tenants fell behind.
Oh no! What happened?
Well, Tom was understandably stressed. He had plans to travel and invest in his retirement account, but suddenly he was facing a cash crunch. It was a wake-up call for him, He realized he needed a better system for handling late payments.
That's such a common situation. I think many people can relate to that feeling of not being financially secure, especially when you're counting on those rental payments.
Exactly. And it's not just about the immediate impact. It can also affect your long-term wealth. If you're not managing those late payments effectively, it can lead to bigger issues down the road, like needing to sell a property, or worse.
Yeah, and then there's the emotional side too. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and anxious about finances, especially as you approach retirement.
For sure. I had another client, let's call her Lisa. She had a couple of rental properties, but when she started having trouble with late payments, it really affected her peace of mind. She was constantly worried about her financial future.
That's tough. I can see how that would take a toll on someone.
It really did. But once we put some strategies in place for managing late payments, she felt a lot more in control. It's all about creating a safety net,
And that sense of control can really help reduce anxiety. It's like building a foundation for your financial future.
Exactly. And when you think about wealth transfer too, that's another layer. If you're planning to pass down these properties to your family, you want to make sure they're in good standing, right?
Definitely. You wouldn't want your kids to inherit a mess of overdue payments or issues with tenants.
No way. I've seen families struggle with that kind of legacy. It's important to set up a system that not only protects your investments, but also makes it easier for your loved ones down the line.
So true. And with the current economic trends, as more people are considering renting instead of buying, I think the rental market is going to continue to grow.
Right. And that means more opportunities, but also more responsibility. As a landlord, you have to be prepared for the ups and downs, including late payments.
And being proactive about it can really set you apart. It's not just about reacting. It's about anticipating challenges and having a plan in place.
Exactly. Like, let's say you have a tenant who's always been reliable but suddenly misses a payment. Instead of panicking, having a legal framework and communication plan ready can make a big difference.
Yes. And that's where it gets interesting. It's not just about sending a late notice. It's about understanding the tenant situation and figuring out a solution that works for both parties.
Exactly. Sometimes life happens, and being empathetic can go a long way. I had a landlord client who worked with a tenant facing job loss. Instead of jumping straight to eviction, they created a payment plan that allowed the tenant to catch up.
That's a perfect example of how a little flexibility can not only save a tenant, but also protect the landlord's investment.
Absolutely. And as we age, we also think more about our legacy and how we treat others in our business. Building good relationships with tenants can lead to long-term stability.
I love that. It's like investing in people as well as properties.
Yep. And let's not forget about the current market shifts. Understanding your local rental market is crucial. If you know rental demand is high, you can plan better for potential late payments, anticipating that you might have options to fill vacancies quickly.
That's so insightful. Plus, being aware of economic trends can help you adjust your rental strategy or pricing, making sure you're still attracting good tenants even in tough times.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. And for those over 40, this is about building a sustainable future. You want to ensure your investments are solid, especially as you think about retirement.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaway here is that handling late rent payments is more than just a financial issue. It's a holistic approach to security in your life.
Right, and it influences your emotional well-being too. It's about feeling secure, not just financially, but also knowing that you have a plan in place.
So what's next? How do we dive into the core strategies for managing those late payments effectively?
So when it comes to handling late rent payments, one of the first things I always tell my clients is to have a clear process in place. Something that lays out what happens when rent isn't paid on time.
Right, like a step-by-step plan? That makes sense.
Exactly. You want to set expectations from the get-go. So, for example, if rent is due on the first of the month, I recommend having a grace period, maybe a few days. But then, after that, you should have a clear policy on late fees.
Yeah, and that can be a bit tricky, can it? You want to be firm but also fair.
Absolutely. I usually suggest a late fee of around 5% of the rent for the first late payment, and maybe an additional 2.5% for each month. It's late after that. But, check your local laws first. Some places have caps on what you can charge.
That's a good point. Laws can vary quite a bit. So, what do you think is a good way to communicate this to tenants?
Transparency is key. I always include the late fee policy in the lease agreement, and then I go over it with them during the lease signing. It's important they understand it up front.
Makes sense. What about reminders? Do you think sending reminders is a good idea?
Definitely. A friendly reminder a few days before rent is due can help. Just a quick email or text saying, "Hey, just a reminder that rent is due soon." It shows you care, but it also reinforces the expectation.
Right. And it gives them a heads up. So let's say they still don't pay after the grace period. What's the next step?
After that, I'd recommend reaching out directly. Have a conversation. Sometimes people run into genuine financial difficulties, and a little understanding can go a long way.
So more of a human approach, right?
Exactly. Maybe they just need a payment plan or a little extra time. But if they're unresponsive or it becomes a pattern, that's when you have to start thinking about legal action.
And that can be a tough decision to make, I bet.
It is. But if you've documented everything, like late notices, conversations, etc., you're in a much stronger position.
Documentation is critical, huh?
For sure. It's like the foundation of everything. If you ever need to take it to court, having that paper trail can make all the difference.
So what about the eviction process? When does that come into play?
Well, eviction should be a last resort. It's a lengthy and often costly process. I'd recommend starting with a formal notice of non-payment, giving them a deadline to pay up or face eviction.
And that varies by region too, I assume?
Yep, every state has its own laws on eviction. Some places require a 30-day notice, while others might allow a quicker process. You have to know the rules in your area.
And I guess keeping a good relationship with your tenants can help avoid that situation entirely.
Exactly. A respectful, communicative relationship can lead to more tenants being proactive about their rent payments. Plus, if they know you're willing to work with them, they might be more likely to reach out instead of just going radio silent.
That makes total sense. Now, let's talk numbers a bit. What kind of metrics should investors keep an eye on when it comes to rental properties?
Great question. One of the most common rules of thumb is the 1% rule. Basically, the property should rent for about 1% of its purchase price each month.
So, if a property costs $200,000, you'd expect to rent it for around $2,000 a month?
Exactly. It's a quick way to gauge whether a property might be a good investment. But, of course, you also want to consider other factors, like location, property condition, and local market trends.
Right, so it's not just about that one number. What else should investors think about?
The 50% rule is another helpful metric. This suggests that about 50% of your rental income will go toward operating expenses. So if you're collecting $2,000 in rent, you should budget around $1,000 for things like maintenance, property management, and taxes.
That's a solid guideline. Are there any other financial metrics that are helpful?
Definitely. The capitalization rate, or cap rate, is important too. It's calculated by taking the net operating income of the property and dividing it by the purchase price.
So if your property generates $20,000 a year in net operating income and you bought it for $200,000, your cap rate would be
10%. That's a pretty good cap rate, actually. Generally, investors look for a cap rate between 6% to 10%. Anything above 10% is considered great, but it often comes with higher risk.
Got it. So it's really about balancing those figures and understanding the risks involved.
Exactly. And don't forget about market research. Look at comparable rental properties in the area to get a better idea of what tenants are willing to pay.
So it's a combination of metrics, market research, and good communication. But what are some common pitfalls investors should watch out for?
That's a big one. One common mistake is underestimating expenses. Many new investors forget to account for things like vacancy rates or unexpected repairs.
Right, that can really eat into your profits.
Yep. And another pitfall is not having an emergency fund set aside. Things can go wrong, and having that cushion can save you from panic mode.
So it's about being prepared and doing your homework, right?
Exactly. Investing in real estate can be incredibly rewarding, but it comes with its challenges. If you stay informed and have a solid strategy, you'll be in a much better position to succeed. You know, Sarah, one of the biggest pitfalls I see with new investors is over-leveraging. They're excited, they see the market booming, and they think, let's just push it to the limit. But that can really backfire.
Absolutely. It's like they're so focused on getting that next property that they ignore the reality of their financial situation. I mean, have you seen that happen with anyone you know?
Yeah, definitely. I had a client a while back who bought multiple properties in a short span, all with high-interest loans. At first, everything seemed fine, but then the market shifted a bit, and suddenly they were struggling to cover the mortgage payments.
Ouch! That must have been tough to watch. It's so easy to get swept up in the excitement, but those interest rates can really bite you later.
Right? And what makes it worse is when you have tenants who don't pay on time. That's another common issue. Sometimes people invest without properly vetting their tenants, and then they find themselves in a tough spot, waiting weeks or even months for rent.
Yeah, I can see how that would add stress. So what are some warning signs that someone should look for when screening tenants?
Well, first off, you want to check their credit history. A low credit score can be a red flag. Also, previous eviction records. That's a huge warning sign. It's like, if they've been evicted before, there's a good chance it could happen again, right?
Makes perfect sense. And I guess it's also about asking the right questions during the interview process.
Exactly. You want to ask about their employment, income stability, and even their rental history. A tenant who can't provide solid references, that's a red flag right there.
So what about cash flow? I think a lot of people overlook that part, don't you?
Oh, totally. They get so caught up in the idea of owning property that they forget to calculate their actual cash flow. I had a friend who bought a duplex, thinking it was a great investment. But after accounting for property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, he realized he barely broke even each month.
That's frustrating. And it's not like those costs just disappear. They can really eat into potential profits.
Exactly. And let's not forget about hidden costs. Many new investors don't factor in things like property management fees, repairs, or, even vacancy rates. Those can add up quickly and surprise you when the bills start coming in.
Definitely. It's like the classic saying, what you don't know can hurt you. So how can someone avoid falling into that trap?
Well, it all comes down to doing your homework. Research your market and understand the typical costs associated with rental properties. And always have a buffer, like a financial cushion to cover unexpected expenses.
That's a smart approach. And then there's the timing of the market, right? Some investors think they can time the market perfectly, but that's risky.
Yeah, trying to time the market is like playing a game of roulette. I had a client who waited to buy because they thought prices would drop. They hesitated for over a year, and by the time they decided to jump in, prices had shot up significantly.
That's a hard lesson to learn. It seems like sometimes it's better to just get in and start building equity rather than waiting for the perfect moment.
Exactly. You want to focus on the long-term benefits of holding real estate rather than trying to play the short-term game.
And I guess if you do find yourself in a tough spot, there are ways to recover, right?
Yes, definitely. If you're dealing with late rent payments, communication is key. First, reach out to your tenant and see what's going on. Sometimes, life happens, and they might just need a little extra time.
Right, and being understanding can sometimes lead to better outcomes. I guess it's about finding that balance between being firm and compassionate.
Exactly. And if things don't improve, you may want to consider setting up a payment plan or, in some cases, starting the eviction process. But that should always be the last resort.
That's a tough decision to make. So what would you say are some good practices to ensure you're not caught off guard with late payments?
Well, one thing I always recommend is to establish clear lease terms. Make sure tenants understand when rent is due and what the penalties are for late payments. Also, consider using technology, like automatic payment systems. They can really help streamline the process.
That's a smart idea. And it can save both parties a lot of hassle.
And remember, always have an emergency fund set aside. It's a safety net that can help you cover unexpected expenses or gaps in cash flow.
That's such a good point. It's all about being prepared, isn't it?
Exactly, Sarah. The more prepared you are, the less likely you are to face those pitfalls.
So, it sounds like the key is to stay informed, do your research, and keep a close eye on your finances.
Absolutely. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, don't hesitate to seek advice from professionals.
That's great advice. It's all about building a solid foundation for long-term success, right?
Exactly. And with the right mindset and strategies, you can navigate those challenges and come out stronger on the other side.
So what's next for someone who's just starting out or looking to improve their approach to property investing?
Well, first, start by reviewing your current investments. Identify any areas where you might be slipping, and then take action. Whether that means improving your tenant screening process or better managing your finances, every little step counts.
Sounds like a solid plan. And of course, continuously educating yourself about the market is crucial too.
Definitely. Attend workshops, read real estate books, listen to podcasts, stay engaged with the community. It all adds up to making more informed decisions.
I love that. It's all about building that knowledge and confidence.
Exactly. And remember, every investor faces challenges, but with the right tools and mindset, you can turn those challenges into opportunities. So, when we talk about handling late rent payments, it's really crucial to have a strategy and some practical tools at your fingertips.
Absolutely, Mike. And starting with immediate actions people can take. What do you think should be the first step?
Well, I'd say, first off, set clear expectations with your tenants from the beginning. Have a solid lease agreement that outlines due dates, late fees, and the process for handling late payments. It can really save you a lot of headaches later on.
Right, and I think it's also important to have a consistent communication strategy, like if a tenant is late, reach out to them early. A simple text or email can go a long way in maintaining that relationship.
Exactly. And then, if late payments become a pattern, consider using some tools, like Rentometer. It helps you track rental prices in your area and see if your rent is competitive. Sometimes, tenants might struggle due to, market factors.
That's a great point. And if you're trying to analyze your rental income or expenses, tools like the Bigger Pockets calculator or Deal Check can really help you crunch those numbers.
For sure. And if you're looking to stay on top of your properties, accessing your local MLS can be beneficial too. You can keep an eye on comparable rentals, which helps you adjust rent if necessary.
And I've heard about some apps that can help with rent collection, right? Like Cozy or Rentec Direct. They automate reminders and make it easier for tenants to pay on time.
Yep, those are solid options. Keeping things automated cuts down on the time you spend chasing payments. And, it's also about creating good habits for yourself.
Like what?
Well, starting small. You could set a goal to analyze one deal per week. Just get familiar with the numbers and the processes involved.
That's a manageable goal, and joining a local real estate meetup can also help you build a network. You can share experiences with other investors who might have faced similar challenges.
Absolutely. Networking can open doors and give you insights that you might not find in books or online. Speaking of books, have you read The Landlord Survival Guide by Jeffrey Taylor? It's packed with practical advice.
I haven't, but I've heard good things about it. Another great resource is the Bigger Pockets podcast. They often cover real-life scenarios that can really resonate with listeners.
Yes, that podcast is gold. They break things down in a way that feels relatable. And, it's important to stay educational. Maybe set a goal to listen to one episode a week.
That's a nice way to make learning a habit. And what about having a checklist for your rental properties? Simple things like inspecting properties regularly can help catch issues before they escalate.
Definitely. A checklist can be a lifesaver. You could include things like checking smoke detectors, ensuring appliances are working, and of course, checking in on your tenants, just to see how they're doing.
Right, it's about keeping that line of communication open, and if you ever need to escalate things, having a good understanding of local laws is key. Maybe consider looking up resources from your local housing authority.
Yes, knowing the legal side can empower you as an investor. There are also online forums where you can ask questions and get feedback from experienced landlords.
That's true. Just remember, you're not alone in this. Connecting with others can really help you feel more confident as you navigate these challenges.
Exactly. So, with all these tools and strategies, it's really about taking those first steps.
And starting where you are, right? Even small actions can lead to big changes over time.
Absolutely, Sarah. So those are some practical first steps. Now let's bring this all together. Well, Sarah, as we wrap up this episode, I think it's important to highlight a few key takeaways.
Absolutely, Mike. One of the first things we talked about was the importance of setting clear expectations with tenants from the get-go. It really helps avoid misunderstandings later.
Right. And then we discussed the value of open communication. Keeping that dialogue flowing can really make a difference when issues arise.
Yeah. And we also touched on how crucial it is to have a solid lease agreement. Having everything in writing protects both you and your tenants.
And let's not forget the resources available for landlords. Whether it's legal advice or support groups, knowing where to turn is key.
Definitely. And handling things legally with a clear process in mind can save a lot of stress down the line.
For sure. And all of this comes back to the bigger picture of building wealth through real estate. It's not just about the properties, but about creating a sustainable income stream for the future.
Exactly. It's an investment in your future. And with the right strategies, anyone can build that wealth. It's never too late to start.
So if you found value in today's discussion, we'd love for you to like this episode. Subscribe to stay updated and share your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have in the comments.
Yes, and if you know someone over 40 who wants to dive into property investing, share this podcast with them. Let's help each other on this journey.
Next time, we'll be diving into evictions with the step-by-step process and the 2026 rules. It's going to be super informative.
It really will. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We appreciate you being part of our community.
Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.